Good evening. Great to see such a big crowd tonight. We still have lots of people coming in on Zoom, but we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Bob Moore, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this evening's program, Home Elevation 3 Sanibel Case Studies. This is a hot topic, understandably, given all the flooding events that we've been through collectively as a community. We have over 350 people registered to attend, about 150 of you here in the room, and over 200 who've registered through Zoom. Hello to all of you who are watching online. If you could please make sure you mute yourselves, it will help with the quality of the program tonight. We'll be recording this evening's event as well, so when that is available, we'll send out a link to anybody who's unable to watch live will be able to watch the recording. I want to give some special thanks right up front to our primary sponsors for this evening's program, Sarah Ashton and Krish Kirshner of the Ashner-Kirshner Group of Keller Williams. Sarah, are you guys in here? There you are. Thank you so much. This program is really made possible through their generous support. We also want to give a thanks to the Ding Darling Wildlife Society, who stepped in and helped us out when we had to upgrade to a bigger room to accommodate everybody. So thanks to the Ding Darling. So tonight's program is brought to you by SanCap Resilience. Hang on, get this to work here. There we go. And in particular, the Resilient Buildings Working Group, which is a team of volunteers working to gather resources that SanCap Resilience can disseminate to the community to support our mission. I serve as the chair of the SanCap Resilience Steering Committee. And for those of you who are not familiar, our organization is a coalition of concerned citizens, as yourselves, along with a whole host of not-for-profit organizations in the community that came together on the heels of Hurricane Ian. You can see our list of partner organizations, many of which I'm sure you're very familiar with and are probably likely involved in some way with already. The goal of forming our coalition was to both amplify the work that each of our partner organizations are doing related to resilience and sustainability, but then also look at ways that we might fill in any gaps that existed, that no one organization is doing on its own. To date, we've had two primary areas of focus. The first is to help provide information and resources in the immediate aftermath of Hurricane Ian, and now Milton and Helene, to help residents and businesses recover and build back more resiliently. So tonight's program is an example. The second is to help facilitate and advocate for planning that helps our community to be better prepared for the future, both in terms of adaptation to the effects of climate change, but also to demonstrate how a community can serve its own interests by being a part of a broader effort to reduce the future impacts of climate change by reducing its carbon footprint. If you haven't already, I hope you'll stop by our resource table in the back of the room, speak with members of our buildings working group, and hopefully you had a chance to fill out the raffle on your way in. Thanks to Keller Williams. Again, there will be a drawing at the end of tonight's program for a $100 gift certificate to the SCCF Native Plant Nursery. And if you're going to win, you need to stay to the end. So stick around. I'm also excited to announce the launch of our new website, which is filled with all kinds of great information, including links to past recordings of our previous community programs. A recording of tonight's event will be posted on the new website as well. Plus, there's a link to a written version of the case studies you're going to hear about tonight. So check it out. The URL is sancapresilience.org. And this site was built for us by the Sanibel Captiva Chamber of Commerce. So I really want to give a thank you to John Lai and the board of directors at the chamber who helped us put that together. I want to make one last comment before I turn it over to our presenters tonight. Um, Tonight's program is all about neighbors talking to neighbors. By necessity, we've all begun to become expert in areas we never thought we would and maybe never wanted to be. But nonetheless, we've learned a lot about what it means to be resilient and help our homes and our landscapes be more resilient and sustainable. So there's a lot of knowledge now in our community on different aspects of resiliency and sustainability. In tonight's event, you'll hear homeowners talking about their experiences with elevating their homes to get up above the floodplain. But there are many other things that people have been doing, from hardening their buildings against wind and rain, to elevating appliances and outlets above the floodplain, to incorporating strategies to keep water out of ground level structures or using more flood resistant materials, to improving energy resilience and sustainability with solar, backup power, or other forms of energy backup, to planting more resilient landscapes, and on and on. The list goes on. So following tonight's program, we're going to launch what we're calling our Neighbor to Neighbor program to try to capture from all of you the things that you've done that have been successful, and to compile that into an anthology that's organized and you can search on different kinds of topics. A lot of this has been happening on Facebook or on other sites informally, and we'd like to gather all that good information in one place and make it available online. So stay tuned, keep an eye out for that, and start thinking about some of the best practices that you might be able to contribute to that broad effort. All right, let's transition now to our home elevation program. Tonight's program is moderated by Kip Buntroft, the chair of our Resilient Buildings Working Group, and Will Jones, who's one of our working group members. Now, Kip, probably more than half of you already know in this room. He came here when he was 11 years old, over 50 years ago, and in his words, has spent every year since on this beautiful island. He's got a background in business administration, has worked as management director in his father's business in the 80s and 90s, managing large condo developments, working with 20 or more different condo boards. He's a licensed realtor and has been doing that since the 80s as well. Since Hurricane Ian, he's been helping people with rides. Those of us who lost cars know that it's a little trickier to get around with a single car family. So that's another service that he's providing. Will Jones also lives on Sanibel. He's an engineer, has 25 years professionally in the engineering and construction business, and shares a sincere love of this island and care for its future. The two of them conducted the interviews of our homeowners tonight, so they will get us started presenting the 3 case studies to get kind of an overview of the lessons learned. And then we'll be inviting the homeowners up here, who are really the stars of tonight's show, to hear from you, hear your questions, and respond and fill in any gaps that you may be curious about. I'll just mention a couple logistics there. We expect a lot of questions, and we want to make sure we get it all on the recording, and we want people on Zoom to be able to hear, so wait for the microphone. I'll be running the mic when we get to that part of the program. And those of you on Zoom, you can enter your questions as we go into the Q&A, or I'm sorry, into the chat. And we'll make sure we get to as many questions as we can. So with no further ado, let me introduce Will and Kip.
Thank you very much, Bob. Yep, I've been here a number of years, and Sanibel, you could say, is my girl. I mean, I don't have a beautiful girl in my life, but this island has filled the bill. I really want to thank the people that we interviewed, our homeowners, sitting right here, the first 4 in this front row. Marco and Ellen, Milt and Jeff are here. Tracy and Janet, the better halves of Milt and Jeff, could not make it. Our elevation case study team consisted of 5 people. Heather Bagan is on it. She's not able to be here tonight. Tom Bierma is our group liaison that helps with the transition of our group to the SanCap Resilience group. Will Jones, of course, is going to help me present tonight, and Craig Wheatley in the audience, who was on the committee study team who put this all together. Now, we are not experts. We're your neighbors. We didn't know much about this at all in the beginning. We started studying this issue and we wanted to share it with the homeowners, hoping it would be of value. And certainly after the last three storms, it's proven that, you know, we need to look at different things. Now we got hit by something called Ian. I stupidly stayed for Ian. I've evacuated for every storm before Ian, and this one, I was like a lot of islanders said, storm surge never has happened, and I'm just gonna ride it out. Well, that wasn't the smartest move. You know, I got to see my island covered with water, and that was something I knew could happen, but didn't think I'd ever witness it. I evacuated my little cottage that I lived in and went up to another place where I knew I might survive. So I knew my cottage was toast once this island got covered with water. And I saw my car move right away from my field of vision. Now, the weather won't stop, that's for sure. But we are beginning to realize in this island, and that's why everybody's here, that the damage can, if you think resiliency and what you can do to mitigate in the future. We didn't know anything about these issues, and our starting questions were what everybody thought. How are homes elevated, and is it safe? How much does it cost, and is it worth it? How did you pick a contractor? What is the elevating experience like, and should you elevate first or renovate first? We started with home number one, which I will get into, but I'm going to let Will talk about the technical building aspects of the homes, which will give you an idea of what we were learning as we began our quest.
And I'll go into some of the specifics of what we're looking at and some of the pictures that will come up later. I think it'll be easier to explain with a visual aid. But the three homes that we used in our analysis, the three homes case studies are all similar yet different. All are slab on grade construction. Two different contractors were used for the three houses. Two of the homes were renovated first. One did their renovation prior to the lift. Two chose to elevate the entire footprint of the home to include the garage and convert that into a space. One of the homes, they chose to leave their garage at the ground level. One of the homes was only elevated what I call half a story, or in their case, just 5 feet. And the other two were elevated an entire story, or 10 feet. The process is pretty straightforward. The first thing that's done is trenches are dug underneath the house on a grid. A structural engineer is predetermined where support needs to be, where new footers will be placed. The slab is reinforced where needed with steel beam, typically an entire network of steel beams underneath, not just around the perimeter. The pilings are set. All of the utilities, your water, your sewer, your electric, are all disconnected. The house is now freestanding and ready to be lifted. It is jacked up in stages. The jacks that are used are really only able to lift it about 8 to 10 inches at a time. And also for safety, they don't take it all the way up in the air. Yeah. New footings and support columns are placed, and then the utilities are reconnected. We have a short video that Channel 2 did on one of the homes here on the island that I'll play for you. And again, this is quite brief. Not supposed to be that brief. Here we go.
We're gonna try that again.
Learning what can be done. A lot of people very interested in staying on the island.
Many people are rebuilding their homes across Southwest Florida and taking extra precautions to protect their investment ahead of the next storm. One couple on Sanibel Island decided to raise their new home above the ground after taking on 3 feet of storm surge during Hurricane Ian.
Putting your house on stilts is an option for people who don't want to tear down their home or want to rebuild higher. NBC2 Gina Tomlinson is on Sanibel talking with a local company about what you should know if you want to raise your home before the upcoming hurricane season.
I'm standing on the garage door, we got 5 owners that live the family's home. 30 feet up, when they're all done, they'll be around 12 feet above sea level. The goal is to be safe and dry for the next storm.
We're high and dry and we're going to be high.
Marco and Ellen Dumont built a foundation on Sanibel, and now they're doing whatever it takes to stay because of the community. It's a small, warm, even after Hurricane Ian's devastation, only like in
Full of
over the countries.
but this is something that everybody's done. Everybody, yeah, some way or another.
But the Dumonts are the first on Sanibel going a different route when it comes to protection for the future flood. Look closely, and you can see their home lifting, slowly inching up from the ground. A Louisiana-based company called Davy Shoring is putting
I'm not sure what that.
Nope. Was there much more?
It's not.
We'll have to start the video.
Okay. It's just not.
Learning what can be done. A lot of people very interested in staying on the island.
Many people are rebuilding their homes across Southwest Florida and taking extra precautions to protect their investment ahead of the next storm. One couple on Sanibel Island decided to raise their new home above the ground after taking on 3 feet of storm surge during Hurricane Ian.
Putting your house on stilts is an option for people who don't want to tear down their home or want to rebuild higher. NBC2 Gina Tomlinson is on Sanibel talking with a local company about what you should know if you want to raise your home before the upcoming hurricane season.
I'm standing on the garage door, and you can see how 5 owners that live the family's home. So far, 30 feet up. When they're all done, they'll be around 12 feet above sea level. The goal is to be safe and dry for the next storm.
We're high and dry and we're going to be high.
Marco and Ellen Dumont built a foundation on Sanibel, and now they're doing whatever it takes to stay because of the community. It's a small, warm, even after Hurricane Ian's devastation, only like in
Full of
over the countries.
but this is something that everybody's done. Everybody, yeah, some way or another.
But the Dumonts are the first on Sanibel going a different route when it comes to protection for the future flood. Look closely, and you can see their home lifting, slowly inching up from the ground. A Louisiana-based company of Davy Shoring is putting their home on stilts.
We pressed these pilings in on the perimeter. We dug footing through the middle of the house. Set all of our jacks.
Then use a pressurized machine to raise the home. The Dumonts, a cheaper choice than knocking their home down or rebuilding higher.
So the third was all about people working together and it has been.
Learning new ways to be safer for the next storms.
It's really exciting, it's progress.
The couple tells me another reason they chose this option, less construction time. So they can get back to the island they love faster. I'm Sanibel, I'm Gina Thomason, NBC2.
Okay, well, the cost is, it's different for a 5-foot lift. Of course, more expensive to go up to a 10-foot lift, like 2 of our 3 houses did. Marco and Ellen did the 5-foot lift, which gave them the peace of mind to, they were above flood elevation and they were still close to the ground, which they wanted to achieve. Now, the nice thing about the news story, house number 1 is Marco and Ellen's, and it was the first house on Sanibel raised, and it was the first house that we found out about. And I did find out about that for our group by just asking people on the island, like, who's done this? And boy, everybody knew Marco and Ellen had done it. So I called Marco up, he said, sure, come on over. And this is the first time that we had learned about what it takes. We were learning, just like you're learning right now, on how the house actually gets raised and elevated. Next slide. Ellen said, we love where we live and want to stay. This was a great option. Like I said, the first house, they interviewed several contractors, which we urge you to do. Other than the cost, the primary concern was the safety of the home. In fact, all of our homeowners were worried about what would happen. It just seems to be a common thread. But during the lift, as will explain, it goes flawlessly.
So this image shows the first step in the lifting, the trenches that are dug around the perimeter, and these lucky guys get to crawl underneath the house and set the footings and set the jacks. Great. When they lifted, well, not a thing according to this homeowner. This home was elevated 5 feet. And the garage remained at the ground level. The wall heights were obviously increased. And the home was repaired prior to the lift. I might point out in this image, the garage floor is in place, but the wall in the background has already been lifted about 18 inches. So the crew saw cut around 3 sides of the garage to eliminate the garage floor from the lift. 5 feet gets us high enough, we shouldn't have a problem with the flood, but you still put part of the yard in the pool, whatever was going on outside. Again, this picture shows that the garage remained ground level. Of course, the high wall, the bump out above the garage is now a window. There is a very tall, bright, spacious garage. Plenty of room for bicycles. Lots of storage, gives me a little garage envy. But just a prime example that you don't need to go the whole 10 feet. A partial lift many times is enough.
All right, house number 2. This is where we really stepped up our game as a group. Heather joined us on this interview. Heather, Will, Craig, and I went to the house. We had been tipped off by Marco that it was down the street from him, so we knew where it was, but I had not talked to the homeowner, Milt, at that point. So all 4 of us showed up at Milt's house and were, marveling at what he had done so far. And all of a sudden, lo and behold, there's a guy asking us what we're doing on his property. It was Milt, but he was pretty darn gracious and boy, did he give us, a lot of input on the reasoning he put into lifting the house. And you can see, the next slide, people say you're spending a lot of money. I say, no, I'm making a lot of money. Because he takes the ground, the garage level, it goes up in the air, the entire garage is up in the air, and you can then make that into, extra square footage. You increase the air conditioned, portion of your house. They also didn't want, I mean, the new build is very expensive. He could meet the 50% rule, but wanted more flood protection. So that's why he put the concrete base down, underneath. So now he's got a concrete top and a concrete bottom. The nice thing was that he really said the determining factor was when Janet saw the baseball set on the table during a lift on video, and it never moved. And then Janet said, that's the way we should go. So I thought that was neat, that, it's something that homeowners have to think about. And then the potential of adding square footage to your house, and that appreciation potential is there for the future, as well as insurance costs that will go lower. So they completely rethought the interior layout of their house also. So they were able to redesign their inside to make it flow better. So that's another opportunity you would have, that you could change the floor plan of your house, or just lift it and add the garage square footage to the house. He also elevated that house so that he's got more usable space underneath it now to have for recreation and such. All right, Will's gonna take the technical.
So in this picture, we see that house, completed lift. The structural support of that W-beam, I-beam, underneath to support is actually an upgrade. This homeowner chose to eliminate any additional support columns so that new first floor space would be completely open. But you can see the new CMU block walls all the way around the new first floor. And again, that beam and the new partition wall inside the old garage, we've now got 2 bedrooms. So you've increased your square footage by almost 1,000 feet right off the bat. So increased the value of the home much more than the cost of elevating and restoring it. Chose to enclose the ground level with the concrete block or CMU all the way around the bottom. Of course, that's not necessary. You could just do the footers and the pilings and leave it visually as a stilted home. They now have a large garage, recreational space, incorporated an elevator into this new construction, so that staying long-term is obviously feasible. Again, with that type of first floor, it's easy to secure or open it up to the outdoors if you choose. This is the same house again, but now where that beam was in the last picture, that has been neatly covered over in the new texturing of the exterior. The house is now virtually complete, minus some paint, but new hurricane windows in the 2 new bedrooms and a fully finished exterior.
Okay, on to house number 3, and this was another case of the coconut telegraph working on Sanibel. I was sitting at a restaurant and overheard Jeff, the homeowner, talking about lifting his house. And I said, well, geez, what's going on here, buddy? And we met and agreed to meet at his house with our team a few days later. Now, Heather at Milt's house, I didn't tell you, whipped out a recorder. So we finally got smart and started recording all these things. We didn't do that for Marco and Ellen. But Jeff graciously took us around the house and explained in detail what the house, what he had to do to elevate the house and his circumstances, which I'll let Jeff tell you, because he did restore it first. Then Adalia came and he'll pick it up from there, but then they elevated. Adalia scared him again, and they said, we might as well get the thing up. So he'll elaborate more on that. Jeff said, let's elevate for peace of mind. And he restored it to the 50% rule. He gets reduced insurance, of course, and increases the value again with the garage being made into air conditioned space. His concern also was damage to the lift, but nothing happened. The way the contractor does this is so incredibly meticulous. It only took from January 8th, I think is when he started, 3 months to complete the lift. What we learned from the homeowners was that the city's permitting process got better and better as they got more familiar with the process and really grew to understand that it was a safe way to go. And so it just flowed from there, and they're getting approved a lot quicker now. So that's, again, after Ian, they were behind the 8 ball, and slowly but surely everybody is getting back to speed. The city is trying their hardest to also. Then basically Will's gonna follow back up on explaining how that house got lifted a little bit more.
So in this image, you see all the block, temporary block, as the house is lifted again every 6 inches. There's a new timber frame block system to support it, provide safety for the people who are working underneath it, and also allow for the inspections that need to take place. As the home is elevated and those blocks are put in, time needs to pass, and the inspector needs to see that things have stabilized and things aren't moving and it's not going to tip over. So at this point, it's safe to walk underneath it, and the inspectors can do their thing.
Well, you've got to be realistic. This is a lot of work, but nearly as much as building a new house, which is true. The amount of time to build a new house, to demolish, the cost to demolish, and then design the house, get it through permitting, and get it done. It could be many, a couple years added to the process. They love their new treehouse view. Much of the ground level remains open for recreational use without increasing the impervious area, which gave them options to grow underneath that deck. And there's many different ways it increased that livability of the house once it went up in the air. Will, you're gonna talk this left. Yeah. Yep, the left. Now that's what, after it was all painted, and you can barely tell that house, was on the ground before,
Right, and this is a great example that you don't need to enclose that first floor. You can just leave it on the pilings.
Yeah. So that really explains what our committee was doing to help you guys understand the process. And now we're going to allow you guys to hear, everybody in the audience and the people on Zoom, to have their questions answered from the homeowners. So we're going to invite the four, Milt and Janet, Milt and Jeff up to the table. Oh, how much? I explained that earlier. $75 is for the 5 foot. And, oh, I didn't. I went over that slide.
The slide went off really quickly. Yeah.
Oh, okay. 100 to 110 for a 10-foot lift. 75 square foot for a 5-foot lift. 100 to 110 if you're going to go up 10 feet. So use 100 as your the 10-foot lift level, and 75 per square foot. Yeah. So 1,000 square foot house would be $100. I mean, about $100,000.
All right, let's, wait for the mic for your questions. Okay? Kim, could you repeat the price per square foot? one more time?
$75 per square foot for a 5-foot lift. And then 100 to 110 for a 10-foot lift. See, you are trying to lift it over your base flood elevation, and it's up to you how high you want to go over that. Milton Janet decided 5 feet, got them over the flood elevation, and Marco and Ellen. So that was their decision. So you decide how high you want to lift. That's the range of pricing.
And those were 23, early 24 pricing.
Correct.
Right.
Do
And
you want to comment on other prices, other costs of renovations? Will, that doesn't include your, that connect.
Correct.
Disconnects of the appliance.
And those numbers for the lift are purely just the lift. The disconnect of the utilities is an additional cost, and the reconnect, obviously that's incorporated, you know, with the whole project. As far as the refinishing, and anything you want to do beyond that, if you want to turn your previous garage into living space, that's all money above and beyond the cost of the lift, obviously.
I'm gonna go back here to the second.
I had my house, I'm in a duplex, and I had my duplex raised 11 feet. One thing I did not hear mentioned, and I'm not sure if it's still available, but, from FEMA, there is a $30,000 grant once you raise it. I don't own the other side of my duplex. I was able to get, from my flood insurance policy, the 30,000 once it was completed. My neighbor, not so lucky with his flood company, they want the whole thing done before, never mind the lift, but the whole house redone before they'll give him the 30. But one other thing I wanted to mention also is we have the cost of raising the house, but something to keep in mind that is very expensive is the cost of building the stairs and the decking to get up there. I've gotten some insane quotes. That is difficult, especially, I think the price of lumber has come down a little bit since maybe, initially after the end, but definitely something you want to keep in mind and look into, because you're gonna need entrance and egress, right, into your house with stairs. So,
well, and let's, we have a question we're going to ask the homeowners on the panel. And they're all gonna take turns answering it, so let's get to that. And then, Bob will have the next audience question after that.
Thank you. It takes Jeff here. That credit you reference is called the ICC credit. It's the increased cost of compliance credit. You can get up to $30,000. I plan to collect that or try to collect that. I'm working with my flood company on it as well. They only need one last thing to do that, which is the certificate of completion on the lift itself. So that is something you could get at least to help you with some portion of the reimbursement. I've seen your duplex. I think that you're quite high, isn't it? And there's probably a lot of stairs, and you had a whole decking across the front, I think, so that's not a small effort probably to construct those stairs and the decking that you want to put on it. So it's all relative, you know. I'm sure Marco's cost at 5 feet was significantly different than going to 11 or 12 and all that you have on the front and the back. And that's why it's important to talk to a contractor or a couple of them and spec it out with them. I found for what we did, and you're welcome to come over and look at our house, our decking on the front and the back is amazing, and they did an awesome job. And I feel that the price per square foot on the quality of the work we got is more than fair. So it's just a matter of, but I've heard other people that got other numbers thrown at them, and you just, that's gonna happen, right? I mean, it's a little bit of a opportunistic, in maybe some contractor's case, and you just gotta do your due diligence and find the right fit.
Okay, no problem. We're giving one question to all three homeowners, so they're all gonna answer it in turn. And the question is, starting with Marco and Ellen, how do you feel today about your decision to elevate, and what advice would you offer other Sanibel and Captiva residents who are considering elevating?
It's on. No, we're very happy with it. We made that decision very early on. The house has been renovated inside, we fixed it after the storm. And, after talking to 4 different lift people, there's no doubt that you could do it and do it well. So we're very, very happy with it. We decided not to go up to 10 because we love living ground level. The pool, we had a view of the lake in the back. And the 5 foot gave us where we needed to feel safe about it, but also we were still part of the environment more. And that's what the part that we liked about it.
And our, decision to do 5 feet, we're on the ground, our elevation was 7. So we were, so it was 12 really.
We were high enough that.
High elevation on the
What was the other part?
Yeah, and advice you would offer other San Joaquin residents who are.
If you like to live
Consider.
here and you enjoy where you are, you like your house, lift it, period. It makes perfect sense. It's the cheapest way to protect your home from further damage in the future and still enjoy the island.
Hi, my name is Milt. Marco and I, early on, right after the storm, took a look at both Warren and Jeremy, the 2 major lifters on the island, and evaluated both of them. My wife and I are very happy with the lift that we did. It's giving us a peace of mind. We opted to go 10 feet, a little over 10 feet, about 11 feet up. It's given us a feeling of safety in terms of future storms, which we know will be happening and what we experienced this year. We did it a little different, and within our cost of lift included all the brickwork around the decking in the front, the decking in the back, the curtain around the property. Everything was included in the price. Since we were early movers on this decision, I think we got preferential pricing by moving earlier. Now there's a heavy demand, so pricing, from what I'm understanding, is changing a little bit. It's a little different. But we're very happy with the decision that we made to go about 11 feet up. We've added about 1,000 square feet to the house by lifting the garage and a causeway that we had. We've increased the size of the house, which was not something we were looking at wanting to do, but it's a benefit that we got out of the lift as well. It's been a long process. Someone asked me the other day, would we do it again? And I don't know if we would, probably sell the house after the storm rather than going through it. But since we've made the decision to stay on the island, I think overall it's the right move to make. What was the other part? What
yeah.
advice?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would, like I said, we're very happy with the move. It's longer than what we thought. We did not have our expectations necessarily aligned with what the reality has been over the 2 years. We went through a difficult process with the city. Granted that they had a heavy load of permits coming in and a learning on their end. And they, as Kip said, have taken what they've learned from the early adapters and helped the future people coming along go a lot quicker. But it's been a lot more challenging than we initially thought it was going to be. So overall, again, we're very happy.
I'll go back to Kip's comment earlier about Adalia a little bit and kind of how that drove our decision. Our house was already at about 5.5 feet in just natural grade above sea level. So we only had to probably go 4 feet, give or take, to be in accommodation with any FEMA requirements. That was something we learned kind of throughout the process as we were making the decision, but we had finished and repaired the house after Ian. We had 40 inches of water in the home, had to gut everything, throw everything away and start over like many of you, I'm sure. And so we had repaired everything and we didn't even know lifting was an option. And I only found out about that as kind of around the timing of Adalia. We were getting ready to go for our certificate of completion. That storm didn't even technically hit Sanibel. It was just out in the Gulf, but it came at the perfect time. High tide, new moon, and we're on a canal, and that water came up out of the canal probably 10 feet from the back door. And all I could do was watch it. And it was at that point that we just said, you know what, let's do this. And I got some information on different options. And I sat down and met with Davey, and we talked through the options and alternatives and what we might do with the new space once it's lifted underneath, what we do with the space that we're lifting in our garage, which becomes a new bedroom and a new bathroom. So we go from a 3-2 to a 4-3 and pick up that extra space. And we get all the usability of the underneath. So that's why we decided to go the full 10 feet. So we could have a drive-in 2-car garage underneath. So we could have that open space that you see, you know, under here on the right-hand side. That's just a great airflow, and that'll be great recreational use. And that's kind of what was our catalyst for doing it. My biggest concern was probably the fact that we had finished everything inside. So I was worried about drywall cracks, I was worried about tile cracks, doors not being true, windows not being true and hanging or not working properly. None of that was an issue. When they came out, they said, if your house is not level when we start, it will be when we're done, because that's how we work this process. And that was so true. I could put a golf ball down in a couple of spots that would roll. That doesn't happen anymore. There were 59 hydraulic jacks under the house, and each one of those had a measurement before each lift. And they all went up with the machine you saw. And Vernon was running that. He's done that for 16 years for that crew. He knows what he's doing with his eyes closed. So it was just an amazing precision process and an engineering process that was honestly quite impressive. I would do it again, because I think at some point you got to protect the asset. And if not, what I'm going to be doing again is gutting another house, or gutting the house again, which I did not want to do. It is a significant project, no doubt. It's not inexpensive, but compared to building a new house and tearing it off, somebody told me, hey, well, just tear off the roof and build up. Well, we had already finished the house, so we didn't want to do that. And another was tear it down and start, oh, well, we have already refinished, and that's going to take me 2 to 3 years to build a new home. So that's not happening. And I think the fraction or the percentage of cost, I'm probably 25% of what it would have cost to build, maybe worst case, 30 or 40% to build a new home. And we like a home. We like the layout. We like the location. It wasn't about making a major change. So I did have one question where somebody asked me on a reference call from Sarasota. They said, all right, if there's one thing you would do different, what is it? And I said, you know what, there is one thing. And they said, all right, tell me, what is it? And I said, I would have done it sooner. And that is probably something we would all say, but at the time, I didn't really contemplate a storm like Ian, and I didn't think another one would hit us again like we've had so many opportunities recently. So that's what I would share, and just we're happy we did it. But it is an undertaking. It's something you got to be prepared for, but it's so is the alternative. So I think it's a better option. Can I add something?
So to Jeff's remarks, before we lifted our house was actually tilted 3 inches down. And so when they did lift it, they did correct that problem for us. The other reason we lifted the 10 feet to capture the bottom part. And we added value to the house by doing that. But the reason we decided to lift and not take the roof off and build a second level, which some people in our neighborhood is actually doing, it's another alternative, was the fact that when we lifted, we now have our 2-story concrete house. Whereas when you're building that second level, you're building most times you're building a wood level home. And so we felt more secure by having a 2-story concrete home that would be more good. And because of the lift and because of the fact that it's concrete, we dropped our flood insurance because of that thing. And on the recommendation of our insurance company, USAA, suggested not even carrying the flood insurance anymore. So from that perspective, those are things that we really need to take into consideration. So there's really 3 options. I think everyone, 4 options really. One option is you tear down the house and build new. You take off the top of the roof and build a second level. Or you go through and do what we did, is that you lift it, or the 4th option, you leave it where it is. And I think you really have a couple of options, and one is every year you worry about the hurricane hitting you, or you move away, or you do one of those 4 options. So you're gonna live with it for the rest of your future years as you go forward.
I want to add something that, when we were investigating, because we were early on adopters, we were 6 months after the storm, we were in our home. We had flooded out completely. And, I talked to two builders that I respect, considerably, and both of them gave me ideas of what it would cost if we were to tear the house down or build on top of the existing structure. It was so cost effective to lift the house, there was no question what we're gonna do. The question is, if you don't like the home and you want to change it, adapt it, sure, you know, maybe that's an alternative. But it was so cost effective to lift it. And whether we got a little bit break being the first ones, yeah, I guess we did, but it's still very cost effective and it's quick. 3 months, basically.
Yep.
From start to finish. Ellen was in the house during the lift. Right. And you didn't even know. Oh, no, it was fine. So we were living in the house during the whole event until they started, the day before the lift, we disconnected the plumbing, we disconnected the electric. So the only holdup really was the electric company coming back in to hook it up because it took them about a week. We were running on a generator and we could go in and out of the house. The refrigerators were still going, the air conditioner was still going because we were running a generator. So it's very, very doable, very safe, nothing cracked for us either. And Vernon, who did both our lifts, he came in and he said, you know, one part of your house is 2 inches lower than the other part of the house. I said, leave it alone. I got all the doors done, all the windows done, everything's fine inside. Well, later on, he said, well, I adjusted it. I said, how the heck did you do that? He said, I just lifted one side a little bit more than the other. We were in the house and the baseboard was all in, and I said to him, maybe I'm imagining something, but there's a gap between the baseboard and the floor. He said, yeah, I think there is. The next lift, it was gone. He said, what'd you do? He said, well, there were two, I know where all my jacks are, and I added 200 pounds pressure on those two jacks and closed that gap up. Didn't crack the thing. It's an amazing process. Very, very safe. And you wind up with a great product.
Let's take some audience questions.
First of all, thank you for the presentation, very informative. We're Paul and Janet, we're at the far end of the island on Coconut. And we had a quote from Marco, the same firm that you use. The quote was, and relevant to a prior question, it was about $131 a square foot, an additional 10% for the stairs, the utilities, etc. With all due respect to the airlines and Uber, perhaps it's a surge pricing, is that demand is higher, so they raise the price. We found the total price, which would have been about $350,000, to be far higher than the value. We're at 3 feet now. This would have gone to 5 feet. And we thought that's an awful lot to only get 2 feet more. We did ask the representative from Davie, could we go higher up to the limit? He said the regulations, etc., on the island would cause the price to go up exponentially. He said it would be far more difficult to get approval to go up to 10 feet there or whatever. I don't know. I have not followed up with the planning department to see if that's true. That's my comment. I do think the price was higher, and this quote was about 2 months ago. And one last question for all three of you, because a worry came up, would there be breakage? Is there insurance provided by the firm that raises it to cover any problems that might occur?
Okay, in terms of your pricing, I can't comment on what the pricing is now. I know it's gone up, but I think Marco will probably say the same thing. When you're looking at the first 5 feet and then making the decision like we did to go 11 feet, for us, that increase was not exponential. It was a very little increase in terms of the cost. Our problem on the lifting of the 10 feet was more around the city regulations on the height and line of sight. Initially, they weren't gonna allow us to go 4 feet, and then after some discussions with the city and changes in the building rules, we were able to achieve the 10 or 11 feet that we did raise, we did raise it.
Other questions?
What was the second part? I'm sorry, what was the second part of your question?
Oh, was there insurance for breakage?
Yeah, they all, well, they all carry insurance, so if there's any damage to your, home as the lift occurs, their insurance will cover that.
Built into the price that they.
Yes, yes.
No, I would just follow up with them if you're not happy with that quote and tell them where you're at on it and get their feedback, because that doesn't sound like the experience I had with them. So, like, if the numbers don't seem to jive or it's not cost effective, I mean, it is the first 5 feet, like he said, is more expensive than the last 5, because then they're just going incrementally. They've done all the hard work, and it's not like this is something that it's a commodity. You can just go and say, all right, give me cheaper steel or less cement or less rebar. This is manual intensive work, and that's what it is. And and there's no shortcut, right? There's no way to do it faster. It's guys under the house digging and digging and digging and then lifting, and it's just, there's a price for that, and it's just, but the quality that we got out of it, I feel like it was fair, but I would follow up with them if there's something that is disconnected there. They may even be watching. I'm sure they follow up with you.
Martha, did you?
One thing I would say is when you get the contract, have an attorney take a look at it, review it.
There are so many variables in each one of our homes that are different. So you can't say that our house is an example of what you're gonna get. So you really have to sit down.
When you're done.
Right, and you really have to sit down with people you thinking of hiring to do the lift and ask them questions. Break things down, because it sounded like everything was included in there, the deck and all the variables. So break it out, so you can see where the costs are. So start with the actual lift itself, and then you may not want to have the lift company do the peripheral work. Hire, talk to a builder to do that other work, because they'll do that. Have them come in for the deck and the stairs and that type of thing. So you have a comparison between the lift company you choose and the builder, because they can work in concert with each other. You can do the work, except for the decks and the stairs, of course. You can do the interior work ahead of time if you want, or you can lift it and then do everything afterwards. Either way.
Have a question over here.
One thing to add on to that in terms of variability. So our house is 2,400 square feet, including garage that went up. And when we signed in November of last year, it was $100 a square foot. So that price was $240,000 to lift the house. And I said, but we have a 2-car garage, and I do not want a piling in the middle of that garage. I want to be able to drive in anywhere I want and park wherever in that. So they said, no problem. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to add more steel like you have across the front of yours. We use 12-inch I-beams instead on the header and on the front of the garage in the back and in the middle. Doubled up some columns, created reinforcement. That added another $14,000. So I went from 240 to 254. But it was very meticulous, and there was, okay, price per linear foot, this is what we're gonna do, add another column, more rebar, more labor, boom. There wasn't any, smoke and mirrors. It was very clear, and that's what I wanted, and that's what they put together. And there were surprises. They told me there's gonna be surprises in this project. There are in every lift. There's things we get under the house we find that we didn't plan for. Some of ours was in the footing and how it was constructed, which ended up being a blessing in the end. But what I did find, which I was very pleased about, is every one of those surprises that they planned on and anticipated, they responded incredibly professionally, gave me multiple options to choose from, gave me a recommendation on which they preferred, which I agreed with, and there was never a change order discussion. The price was the price, the contract was the contract, the 10-foot lift was the product, and we're gonna get it done. And so I felt very good about that, because you enter into it not knowing, like, what am I gonna find out with change order number 1, and down the line, that conversation never happened. We use Davy Shore. Yes.
Got a question.
What happens to the cost of your wind insurance, flood insurance, homeowners insurance after? Compared to what people?
It goes down. It depends. Our flood insurance was probably cut in half. In your case, they told you, you probably don't even need flood insurance anymore. So drop it. My flood insurance on the ground was almost $5,000. It's now at about $2,500. I still think that's overpriced, but I'm waiting to get my final certificate of completion and everything, so I can go shop that further. In the meantime, that's what it is, but.
Yeah, so if you don't have a mortgage, you can drop the flood insurance. If you have a mortgage, your mortgage company may require you to carry the flood insurance. But because of the concrete, wall around the facility and the stairs and everything else, the flood insurance would only cover structural damage, and the insurance company would feel that the worst of the storms would cause them structural damage. So recommendation, that's something.
Okay, we're going to go to some comments or questions from our Zoom audience.
Okay, so there are several questions about what goes under, like, on the ground, so they said, is material placed beneath the entire slab so it doesn't crack during the lift or over time? Someone else said, does the building have to be on a concrete slab? And someone else says, does the $110 a foot include new concrete under the home, or is that extra?
Well, everything's an extra. After the lift, if you want concrete slab on the ground level, yes, that's an extra. But that's something you discuss at the time when you're doing the contract for the lift, because then you'll do that at the same time. In terms of what was the other thing? Yeah, the slab is supported because the engineering is done first. And that they determine where the supports are going to go and what kind of supports are done, whether it's a long steel beam, or in our case, we had supports, you see, this is a crawl space under ours. So we had a post every 5 feet, and there were steel beams that supported the slab above those beams. So ours was different than theirs in terms of longer beams. We didn't need that. So it's engineered for your application. So you can't say one fits it all. They're different each time. And that goes into the cost again too. So you have to have them look at it with you as to what they deem appropriate engineering wise that the city will approve.
One other thing I'll add is, we were different than Marco and Jeff in that when we did our lift, we went with the lifter, Jeremy, Modern Movers. Not only lifted the house, they renovated the inside of the house. So as Kip said, we could have gone, probably hit the 50-50 rule and renovated the house. What we opted instead to do was to tear down everything on the inside of the house, just keep the concrete walls. And then part of what Jeremy did for us was to lift the house and then to renovate the inside of the house. So we redesigned the entire inside, replaced all the electrical and the plumbing. The nice thing, when you lift the house, you're not beholden to the location of where your electrical and wiring or plumbing is, because it's going to come in underneath the house and you can leave that all around. So we took advantage of that. But you sit down with the companies, both of them are very good. And you talk with them about what your goals and objectives are and what you want to accomplish in the task. And they'll work with you on that, and they'll price out what's there. And as Marco said, you can farm some of that out to a third party, another builder or something like that, and see if the pricing is any better. We opted to go with the whole process with the one builder, and got everything done by Jeremy.
One last point, I think they asked, does it have to be on a slab? And I think in that Zoom question, it doesn't. I think if you're on a normal wood joist structure, it's even easier for them to lift those homes and probably less expensive. The slab's a lot more intrusive and there's a lot more to support in the structure. Like if you look under our house, the maximum allowable unsupported stance was 5 feet 2 inches. So under each column at 12 feet, there's a I-beam tray structure that's built. And those are 5 feet 2 inches apart. So it's kind of what I was told when they came over is we need to engineer this to be like a parking deck. And then you've got F-250s in your living room. That's kind of what we're building to. And that's what the city is looking at from an engineering perspective as well. So if you're not on a slab, it's even easier. And probably faster for them to get it done as well.
This is great. We're running a little shy on time, so I want to get to as many questions as we can. So as you're answering, add in if you have something particular to add, but don't necessarily feel like everybody has to come up in every question. You want to do the next one?
There's a question about if anyone had to have the soil testing done before the lift.
No, we didn't have to.
No. Yes. The geotesting is not required.
Do one more from the Zoom and then we'll go back to the room.
There were a lot of questions about FEMA coverage or insurance, and did any of those help cover the cost of lifting the home?
I could say in our case, we didn't get any funding on the lifting because, the way the 30,000 works is if you've used the 250,000 they got from FEMA, you're not eligible for the $30,000 contribution. And we had over $250,000 of flood damage, so we did not participate in that.
That's interesting. I didn't know that because I wouldn't view that I got the 250 from FEMA. I got the 250 from my insurance company. But I'm expecting, and the guy told me that even though I did get the full 250, that when I get the certificate of completion, send it to him, and he's gonna process the 30 for me. So that was the only benefit I've seen is that ICC credit, which is something that every flood company should be willing to talk to you about. That is a standard opportunity, I think, that we have.
Any more questions in the room? Got one here.
I'm intrigued by what you said about the city. Were they helpful or obstructions?
I found them to be helpful. They want this solution to be, or this problem to be solved. There were a ton of questions early on, and I know when I talked to Davey, they came in and they said, hey, we've been doing this for 30 years and and they said, yeah, but this is Sanibel and we do things a little different here. And so Davey said, okay, how do you want it done? Let's talk about what your method and process and quality requirements and engineering are. And Davey modified to amend and work closely with the city. So they've got, I think, a pretty good process going now where they came together and didn't push it and just said, okay, let's talk about what you need to be comfortable and let's help you let's educate you on our process along the way as well and why we do it this way. And they seem to be working well. I don't know if you guys have similar.
Yeah, our process was a little long. It started in February and ended at last November. It was about 8 months. I think the city was trying to be very helpful, but it was a learning experience for them as well. And it took a little longer for us. Our neighbors since then have gone for their permits and they did it in a month and a half. So I think the city has learned and they've applied that.
I would just say that it was due to the very careful work of Warren Davey. He investigated all of the Lee County regulations, how to do permits, then he got into Sanibel, and he did his due diligence, and we had no problems with the city because of Davey and the homework he did.
Okay, we've got time for one more question, and then we want to make sure we get to the drawing before we send you all home.
Could we get a list of contractors of lift homes that we could all look at, because Davey Shoring isn't calling anybody back.
We've been trying to, as a not-for-profit organization, not be in a position where we're endorsing any particular contractors. And so we could certainly try to find, the building department has let us know that there are currently 28 permits at different stages in the process, some completed. So there is activity going on, and we could maybe try to do some homework, but we have to be careful not to endorse anything. Okay, any final word from our panelists before we shift gears and do our drawing for the $100 gift certificate?
If you could come up and talk to me later, I'll make sure you get a call from Davey if you're not getting one, because that doesn't sound like, sounds like something is off there, so happy to help with that. I'm sure Warren, the owner, would be happy to talk to you himself. When he came out, to our job site, he had two questions. Jeff, how we doing? And are you happy? And he was out there running the skid steer, moving pilings around. I have utmost respect for him and his organization, so that doesn't sound like something he would be accepting of.
We have several more questions in the chat online. We don't have time to get to them all, but we will do our best to publish responses to those questions that we didn't get to tonight. And if you have questions that you didn't get to in the audience, you can email them to info@sancapresilience.org. And again, we'll do our best to get responses from our homeowners.
We'll stick around.
Yeah, okay, absolutely.
We have some questions. We can answer some of that without not getting the whole Warren too.
All right, Sarah, are you ready to do the drawing? I'm gonna turn the camera toward you so that the folks online can see you.
Folks online. All right, Shirley Markwood Hyman. Here.
All right, thanks everyone for your time and attention tonight, and thanks again to our sponsors for this evening's event and our homeowners especially. Info resilient, sorry, SanCap Resilience stuff.
Very nice job, sir. Thank you very much.